Flaccid Snake? I'm literally rescuing an operative called Flaccid Snake? Oh my god, that's incredible. Metal Dragon is a new game from Kai Magazine released for the Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis in late 2021. The game is a top-down shooter which seems to be inspired by the likes of Mercs for the Mega Drive or Shock Troopers for the Neo Geo. Now, this is a game that I've been following for quite some time, and luckily, the developers were kind enough to send me a review copy. Now, one thing I should point out is that the studio behind this game is an MSX developer first and everything else second, as they've already released several projects for the MSX and even a game for the Intellivision. And not gonna lie, some of these projects look really cool. If they ever port them to a system that I actually own, I would love to review them. In fact, Metal Dragon actually began as an MSX game, which was then ported to the Sega Mega Drive. And man, I gotta say, for an MSX title, this looks super impressive and could easily pass for a 16-bit game. But that's not the version we'll be taking a look at today, and perhaps I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So anyway, the game comes in a Sega Mega Drive style box, and okay, I did not expect this for a cover. I mean, it's clearly parodying 80s style movies and posters, but they really went for the sex appeal with this one, didn't they? I mean, I get why they did it, and to be fair, the art does look amazing. But if you're the type of person who's not okay with this sort of imagery on a game cover, yeah, there's really no getting around that. One thing I did notice about the cover is that the colors seem overly saturated. I'm not quite sure how to explain it, but it kind of reminds me of those bootleg Sega cartridges you sometimes see for sale, where the covers and sticker colors are just not quite right. Even the Mega Drive logo, which I'm pretty sure they cannot legally use by the way, looks a little on the blurry side once you actually take a proper look at it. On the back of the box, things are a little more disappointing. You get the same image as the cover art, but now it's in black and white, and I'm also not a big fan of the color gradient it shows for the font. Again, it just gives me some real bootleg vibes here. At least the actual box size and shape will fit in nicely with the rest of your Mega Drive collection and will look good when viewed as part of a set. One thing I should point out though is that the cover is reversible, with one side having the traditional grid background while the other features the blue Mega Drive design. Inside, we find the game, manual, and a set of art cards. The manual looks pretty good at first. I like how the cover is made to look like a classified document. But once you actually open it, it's actually kinda barren, with no art and only some tiny screenshots of the weapons. I don't know, I guess I was hoping for some concept art, zoomed in sprites, or anything really, because the actual in-game art does look pretty good. At least the actual information within the manual is pretty useful, though half of the manual's contents are just a thank you section. Wow, that is a lot of people. The cartridge shell looks pretty close to the real deal, not just in its shape, but also the way the plastic feels, legal text on the back, and sticker size. Place this next to an official cart and you might have some trouble telling the two apart. And oddly enough, the cartridge sticker does not have the color saturation from the box art, so I'm not really sure what happened there. Now, as usual, I'm not a hardware expert, but the pin connectors look beveled to me, which is a very good thing. That is something that a lot of modern releases tend to miss. So good job there, Kai Magazine. And luckily, this is one cartridge that I can actually open. So, here it is. Yep, it sure is a PCB. As usual, if you have any idea what we're looking at, please leave a comment. And finally, we have the art cards, which are renditions from the game's cutscenes, and these look really nice. I always like when developers do this sort of thing, as this is a pretty neat and expensive little extra that always adds an extra flair to your packaging. Overall, Yeah, I'm a bit torn here. The cartridge is excellent, no doubt about it, and the art cards are really nice. But the manual is just so-so, and the cover art while striking seems to be overly saturated. Couple that with the text and screenshots and it gives it this bootleggy feel. Not to mention that the cover art itself will most likely be polarizing for a lot of people. Now, personally I like it, but I also understand if you don't. So yeah, this packaging definitely has its ups and downs, and it's up to you to decide if you like what you see. Anyway, booting up the game, you're quickly shown an intro animation, which tells you that it's the far-off future of 1989 and that the world is besieged by a Cold War in which warring nations are kept in check and the entire world is living on a knife's edge. But thankfully, modern society has moved past this and we are no longer in a Cold War scenario. Anyway, the president's daughter has been kidnapped and it's your job to get her back. And they've previously sent another operative codenamed Flaccid Snake. Flaccid Snake? I'm sorry, I promised myself I wouldn't laugh. But he's missing in action and now the fate of the world rests in your hands. Yeah, you might have noticed this game has a bit of a sense of humor, starting with a parody of the whole winners don't do drugs intro screen, which is stupid, childish, and I love every second of it. Anyway, once you start the game, you're given a Metal Gear Solid-like briefing where you're told to penetrate the enemy base and your character replies with, "Penetrating is my thing, I'll penetrate the f*** out of that base." God damn it! And then you're told that this is a covert operation and you must not kill any enemies or you could risk starting World War III. Yeah, your character just decides to F all that and shoot everyone in his path. Which, yeah, you're kind of an asshole in this game. I mean, it's funny, but you're still an asshole.
He's an asshole.
Anyway, you can run in all 8 directions, shoot, throw grenades which damage an entire area on top of causing more damage than your regular gun, and you have a button that lets you aim without moving. And if you're using a 6-button controller, the extra buttons serve no function. And this is where we run into the first problem. Simply put, there's no strafe button. There is simply no way that you can attack in one direction while moving in a different direction. And that is a massive issue. I mean, both Smash TV and Xeno Crisis had this feature, and not seeing it here is a glaring omission. Especially when you consider that even your own enemies do it. In fact, aiming at your foes in this game is super hard, as they never seem to stand still. So when you couple that with your lack of a strafe button, and the fact that your enemies can't strafe, and that your bullets actually have a limited range, it actually makes the first few moments of Metal Dragon kind of infuriating. And believe it or not, this is the worst sin the game commits, which may not seem like much, but it gets really annoying. I even read the manual wondering if I missed something, but if I did, I sure didn't see it. Anyway, the good news is that you can get used to this, though it does also mean that you often spend your time chasing down enemies. Though to be fair, the game does seem to incentivize you to keep on progressing forward regardless of whether or not you kill them. Even the manual states this, so it's not like you actually have to kill your enemies to progress through the stage. So long as you reach the end, you're making good progress. Though I do suppose that it would have helped if you could play this game with a friend. But sadly, Metal Dragon is a one-player game only. Thankfully, along the way you'll often find cars that you can shoot down to collect new weapons. Some of these do zoom past the stage really fast, so if you're still using your pea shooter, it's usually a good idea to lob a few grenades at them to get the power-up before they get away. Weapon power-ups include a spread gun, which is great for hitting multiple enemies or causing triple damage up close, but it has a low range. There's a machine gun, which is like your regular gun, but has a higher range. And then there's my personal favorite, the sniper rifle. Well, the game calls it a sniper rifle, but really it acts a lot more like that gun that RoboCop used against Ed 209. It has the longest range of them all, and once a shot hits a target, it creates an area of effect explosion. Not to mention it has a high damage output, and it even looks like the gun from RoboCop. The downside being that it has a low refire rate, so it can be a bit hard to hit moving enemies. One cool feature is that every special weapon has limited ammo, but as you pick up more of the same weapon, you don't just replenish your ammo count, you actually increase your original maximum. So this means that as you play, you're often presented with two choices. Either you switch your guns to better fit the situation, but lose your accumulated ammo, or you stick with the previous special weapon so as to gain more ammunition. And this is a nice risk versus reward mechanic that adds more depth to the game, forcing you to take split-second decisions. And I really appreciate the developers for doing this. Now, this game is pretty hard. Not Xenocrisis hard, but still pretty difficult. Thankfully, you do have a fairly generous health bar, which can take quite a bit of punishment. And you'll often come across medkits which partially heal you. And you'll need them too, because this game throws a ton of enemies at you, and they are pretty aggressive, always shooting at you and dodging your fire. And to the game's credit, it often displays an impressive amount of enemies and bullet sprites on screen at the same time, while still keeping a stable frame rate. I mean, it will occasionally dip a little bit, but it's nothing too serious. And as you progress through the stages, you'll also find new enemy types, which are mixed and matched sorta randomly as you inch ever closer to the end. Most of the enemies are fine, but I do wish we had a bit more visual variety, as most of them are just different colored soldiers. Like, I don't know, maybe some shirtless Rambo-looking dudes who walk up to you and try to stab you, but also die in one hit. Just more visual and gameplay variety between the various soldier types, I guess. With that said though, you'll also come across cars, drones, tanks, and even Metal Gear walkers, which the game refers to as Mecha Gears, and it even mocks itself for the lack of originality. I have to say though that for a game that forces you to always be on the run and bombards you over and over with enemies, I feel the Mecha Gears take too much damage before going down, and that the randomized nature of the enemies often seems to verge on the unfair. I mean, if you die once, it's game over, and you have to use a continue. Now, continues do bring you back to a checkpoint, which is pretty generous, but when that happens, you also lock yourself out of the good ending, so do keep that in mind. I think the worst part was right near the end, where you have to blow up several of these doors to progress, but the levels close in a way that leaves you with very little room to maneuver, and all of that happens while you're being swarmed, and the doors themselves take forever to bring down. So yeah, this part was just so infuriating. In fact, while I really enjoyed Metal Dragon's gameplay, I did feel that some of the levels stretched on for too long. It's especially bad when stages start being littered with enemies that used to be bosses, like when you're running through the city and you have to fight several tanks over and over again, which was the first boss from the first level. I mean, I'm not against the idea of using old bosses as regular enemies, but perhaps just not this often, or maybe just make the stage shorter. Then again, it could have all just been a side effect of being swarmed all the time. Between levels and boss fights, you'll often have these Metal Gear Solid-like dialogue sections, though this is the sort of game where the plot doesn't really matter, and the game knows this, which is why it leans so heavily on the humor, usually referencing 70s, 80s and 90s movies every chance it gets. Sometimes it's funny, while other times the jokes fall really flat. Though to be fair, other characters do call you out on this, so it's pretty clear that this is all intentional. You'll find anything from Star Wars quotes, Metal Gear Solid references, self-deprecating humor, sexual innuendo, just about anything you can think of. Even if sometimes your character does veer a little too far into the asshole department.
Who is he? He's an asshole, sir.
Although there were times where I felt the jokes and references fell really flat, especially towards the end, as by that point you've gotten pretty used to the humor. So I feel that by the end, they could have played with your expectations a little bit and subvert some of the jokes, similar to what you see in Duke Nukem Forever's Hollow Duke quotes.
I am here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of ass.
Why yes, I did just list Duke Nukem Forever as a good example. Sue me. I will say though that the references don't end at the dialogues. I mean, you have a boss that is clearly inspired by Metal Gear Solid, whereas Flaccid Snake looks like he was inspired by… Wait, is that Christopher Reeve? Now, the graphics are fairly standard for the system. I think the animations are good, and as mentioned before, where the game really shines is in how many enemy and bullet sprites it can fit on screen without losing a beat. However, the visuals themselves could have used some work. A few of the levels look like almost exact replicas of each other, while others are just minor variations of what we've seen before. Additionally, the color scheme does leave a little to be desired. I mean, it's impressive for an MSX game, but for the Mega Drive, some of these colors seem a little washed out. You also have levels like this, where you have blue walls, blue ground, and blue bullets. Even the fonts are blue, and there's something about this color gradient that made it kind of hard for me to read the text on my TV when running the game through an XRGB Mini FrameMeister. I guess maybe it's time I upgrade to a RetroTink. But even forgetting all of that, some of these levels looked a little too grainy for my taste, especially the roads. Again, it's not that the game looks bad, it looks fairly standard for a Mega Drive game of the time. It's just that a lot of modern Mega Drive releases really go out of their way to impress you. But then again, with this being an MSX port, perhaps I'm being a bit too harsh on it. In the end though, the graphics look fine for what they are. The music is pretty good, though I do feel that it's a little hard to properly appreciate it due to the loud sound effects. Though even when I did get to properly hear it, not gonna lie, I think I liked the MSX renditions a little better. Here, you be the judge. Overall, Metal Dragon is a pretty fun game, though one that had a potential to be much more. But as it is, this is a fun, frantic action game that will keep you on edge. But it has several flaws that, while minor, do start adding up. It's super fun going around and racking up points while progressing through the levels. But the lack of a strafe button and the fact that your enemies take evasive maneuvers makes it hard to take them down. Your weapons are fun to use, but the levels can go on for a bit too long, and reverting back to your original gun in a tricky situation where there are no new weapon pickups can be really frustrating. And while it's cool seeing so many on-screen sprites at the same time, I do feel the color choices could have been more smartly implemented, and the two-player option would also have been appreciated. In the end though, Metal Dragon is a pretty fun game for what it is, and if you're looking for another top-down shooter for your Mega Drive, this will make a fine addition to your collection. Now, if you want to buy this game, you can get the Mega Drive or Genesis version from the Kai Magazine website. Alternatively, you can also get the MSX original as well as a slew of other modern MSX titles from them. Not gonna lie, some of these games make me wish I had an MSX computer, but hopefully they'll be ported to the Mega Drive as well. But in the meantime, I'm really glad to see yet another developer throw their hat into this new 16-bit golden age. And while Metal Dragon isn't perfect, it still makes for a really good time. Hey everyone, thank you for watching Stika's Retro Corner. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell and share this video. All that fun social media stuff. And you can also support me on Patreon. It may not seem like it, but even $1 is a really big help in keeping this channel going. I would also like to thank my newest Patreon supporter, Ray Cerrone. You know, I never actually had rice Cerrone. Is it any good? Someone please tell me. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. Bye!
Keep firing, assholes!